Hello and welcome to Coffee with Craig. It is a fine Tuesday morning. You know, the last couple of weeks, I've been getting a lot of, whether it's text messages, phone calls, Facebook messages, from some of my left-leaning friends, and they're very well-meaning, and they're people who, some of which I know are gun owners, but they're also kind of the what my friends from Arms Room Radio like to call, I support the Second Amendment, but folks who, own a gun, but are not necessarily supporters of the Second Amendment as a constitutional right. They're very, very open and willing to accept the idea of infringements on that particular right. And they're calling me, and for some reason they seem to think that by calling me, they're going to, okay, now that this has happened, we need to have a discussion or a conversation about gun control. What are you willing to do to advance gun control? I was invited to an event to speak even this evening, and I unfortunately had to decline because they said that this is not a debate. Okay, mind you, this is not going to be a debate. This is going to be what are organizations like yours doing to help promote gun control. And, the hardest part about having any one of these sorts of discussions is that the people who generally are calling for these discussions are not interested in really having a true discussion. What they're hoping is, or what they're looking for is, for those of us who believe in the constitutional right to keep and bear arms, for those of us who truly understand that it is a civil right, well, they want to try and find out when, where, and how we are willing to capitulate to their desire to limit or restrict our access to firearms. One such person, and by the way, this is by no means a partisan thing. One of the things that's come up recently is a conversation with John Kasich, who is the governor of Ohio. Interesting guy. In many, many cases, he's had success in a purple state. But he's largely had success by, being a lot like the Democrats in his conversation about a lot of things, including the context of his conversation that he wants to have surrounding guns and gun violence.
I know you want to bring people together over the issue of guns. We had this horrible mass shooting, yet another mass shooting. President Trump said any sort of gun measures wouldn't have helped. Do you agree?
No, I mean, no, of course not in Vegas with this bump stock. Those things ought to be thrown out right away. But look, here's what I'm trying to do. Ohio is a place where people want to solve problems. They're willing to listen to one another. So what I want to do is I want to get a group of reasonable people, pro-gun people, and those who favor limits on gun ownership, and I want to put them in a room and see if we can find some common ground. Everyone, however, respecting the Second Amendment. We're not interested in having somebody come in whose idea is we're just going to take everybody's guns away. That won't work.
But this happens after every mass shooting. People talk about the bump stocks. You said you'd like to get rid of the bump stocks. Nothing has happened.
Here's the situation: we talk about it, and we fight about it. The best way to make progress, and I can't tell you this effort will be successful. I don't know. But here's what I do know. If we can get pro-gun and those who want to have limits on some of the things that we see, bump stocks, people carrying arsenals around in their cars or whatever it is, that is the best chance to be able to advance something when there is a consensus.
We've had the gun control conversation a lot, and we've kind of come to an agreement on that something needs to be done.
We've had a lot of Democrats in office. No one's ever come to take the guns away. Nobody's ever said they're going to come take the guns away. And nothing's getting better. You can't just keep doing nothing forever, which is the current policy that seems to be in place.
You're absolutely right.
My purpose is to get people who respect the Second Amendment but can agree there are some limits to it to sit in a room and develop some policy that I can then pass on to the leadership in my legislature. Without this process, I'm not convinced we will make much progress. I can't guarantee you it will work or it will be effective, but I know just arguing back and forth isn't working.
So, all right, so let's just kind of lay this out there. So first and foremost, I don't know anyone who is arguing for the idea of saying, hey, everyone need to be able to have an arsenal in their trunk, which, by the way, what do you mean when you say arsenal? What defines an arsenal? Is it more than one firearm? Is it one firearm? Is it multiple firearms with more than 50 rounds? What constitutes a quote unquote arsenal? It's that sort of thing. And what was interesting about kind of his comment was, it was a complete and utter disregard for exactly what it means to keep and bear arms. Am I carrying around an arsenal every time I take my firearms with me and I take my kids shooting? If I have multiple firearms, if I have 4 firearms in the car, it's me, my 2 kids. If I have 4 firearms in the car and I have enough rounds for an afternoon of shooting, what is that? Maybe 1,000 rounds, 500 rounds, 1,000 rounds, 2,000 rounds? Is that now? Am I now violating? Do I now have an arsenal and therefore should not be allowed to be able to drive around with that in my car? I mean, this is the sort of things, and I get that's a small point, but here's the thing: the details matter. The details matter when we're having these discussions, because in the end, here's the real deal. In the end, the people who want to ban guns and the people who want to capitulate to their needs don't care about the details. They don't care about the facts. Great example. Salon did an article talking about gun violence and who are the primary victims of gun violence. One of the things that they noted in their article was, well, because of the racial disparity, because 52% of all those who are victims of gun violence are black, well then maybe, or minority, black in this case, an even larger percentage when you include all minorities, maybe we need to do something because it has a disproportionate effect on certain communities. Right? But here's the thing that they refuse to ignore, the thing that they refuse to see. Now, y'all want to have a conversation? All right, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the real deal here, okay? Not included in their numbers, not included in the numbers that they've included here, are who is exactly doing the shooting and what's the scenario in which this is taking place, right? No one wants to talk about the fact that 80% of gun violence outside of suicides, 80% of it is gang or drug related. No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about that an overwhelming percentage of it is located in certain urban communities. We could probably, if we ended gun violence in this many in the top 10 neighborhoods, top 10 communities, right? They're all urban inner city communities. We could probably end just about all gun violence. Well, you get what I'm saying. I mean, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. All right? Let's take a look at who's committing these crimes, right? We're spending a lot of time. Black Lives Matter is investing and spending a whole lot of time talking about, police and law enforcement shooting black men. Well, first of all, the overwhelming percentage, over 200 and some odd black men who are shot by police, the overwhelming percentage of them are armed suspects. 16 have been unarmed suspects. In fact, if a law enforcement officer is 81 times more likely to be shot by a black man than unarmed black man is to be shot by law enforcement. But we don't want to talk about that. Who is, in fact, doing the shooting? Well, we already talked about it. It's gang-related. It's drug-related. And one of the areas where we generally tend to be very, very, how shall we say, segregated, has to do with our violence or our gun violence. 90% of homicides against black people are committed by black people. Now, mind you, 74% of homicides against whites are committed by whites. So I'm not saying it's anything specific, but I point this out for a specific reason because no one wants to talk about this. Everyone wants to say, oh, well, you're just trying to blame black people for gun violence. No, what I'm trying to point out is this, is that first and foremost, gun violence is not the disease. It is the symptom, right? That's like saying, oh, well, someone has tuberculosis. Well, we'll give them cough medicine. We'll address the cough, but you're not going to cure the underlying issue. There's an underlying issue that's in a lot of these communities. And here's the thing. because it's in those because it's in our community. Those of you who don't know, yeah, I'm black. Just for those of you wondering, yes. But here's the thing. That means that the solution is within our control. It means that we have the ability to address the issues in our community. It's not the government. It's not the police. It's not the white man. It's not the Republicans. We have the ability to address those issues. That is empowering. Saying that the government's got to fix it when we know that the government has really never fixed anything. They do a very poor job of even fixing potholes. But when we know that we have the ability, to be able to make those changes. See, here's what I want. I want to be able to know that, number one, I am in control of my life. And I am the number one person responsible for my family, my children. Now, as I step up and take responsibility for myself, part of that has to do with knowing and understanding that I am my own first responder. Meaning that I have a right to not just provide for my family, for myself and my family, emotionally, spiritually, and if necessary, physically, to defend my family, but that I have the means to be able to do so. And when you are going to tell me that you are going to deliberately disarm me because someone else who is ill-meaning, someone else who is seeking to make a victim out of me, who's trying to make me into a victim, you want to disarm me because that person has a gun? You want to take away my gun so that person has a gun. By the way, before you start saying, because this is another one that I've heard, oh, well, nobody's coming to take your guns. One of the guys in that video right there just said it. Well, let's just look at it this way. First of all, when you say, well, we want to limit how many firearms you can have. And yes, I've heard Democrats talk about, or the gun grabbers. You've talked about wanting to limit how many firearms someone's had. You were talking about the guy, not the Texas shooter. You were talking about the guy in Vegas. Well, he had 40 some odd firearms. Well, exactly how many firearms did he use during that shooting? Oh, well, if he used 2 or maybe 3, so then maybe we need to put a limit on number of firearms. Maybe you're only allowed 1. Yes, that's the sort of stupid stuff you guys would come up with. I've seen legislators say, I don't see why anyone would need to purchase more than 1 long gun a month. I don't care why you think you need. It doesn't matter what you think I need. It's called the Bill of Rights, not the Bill of Needs. And that's the other part of the discussion that y'all are just going to have to get your head around. It is a constitutionally protected, constitutionally enumerated right. It doesn't matter what you think I need. As long as you are willing to take my Second Amendment rights and make it a second-class right, then you have undermined any conversation that we could possibly have. That was one of the things that John Kasich is like, well, people who respect the Second Amendment. No, have respect for it in its proper context. It's not just something that's nice. It is our right. It is our right to be able to have arms to defend ourselves. When you tell me that my right to protect myself ends at my front door, but you're not trying to disarm me? I'm a school board member. I go to a meeting now. If someone comes, I go to and I walk onto a school campus, and because now in the state of California, the concealed carry permit holders are no longer able to carry, guess what? I'm a potential victim. I'm disarmed when I walk onto school grounds. How many mass shootings have taken place on school grounds? The state auditor just said most California schools are not prepared in any way to protect their students or the visitors on campus or their staff from mass shootings or from active shooter situations. That was the state auditor. And now you've disarmed me, so don't tell me nothing. Don't tell me you're not trying to disarm me, because that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to tell me, well, I can only have a magazine that holds firearm that holds only 10 rounds. Well, that's interesting. You let law enforcement have more. I'm assuming that you would believe, well, gosh, they're firearms experts. At least that's what y'all say. Well, if they're firearms experts, shouldn't they be able to take down an assailant with fewer rounds than me? A lowly CCW holder? But no, I'm supposed to be the expert marksman that can take down multiple assailants with only 10 rounds. These are the sorts of conversations you don't want. You keep wanting to ban, for example, you keep wanting to ban semi-automatic rifles like the AR-15, the most commonly owned firearm in the country, despite the fact that Heller specifically noted that you can't ban firearms that are safe and in common use. And when I say safe, let's just be real. Less than 3% of all violent crimes are committed with long guns, period, let alone AR-style 15s. AR-15 style rifles. And then we look at, for example, some of these shootings, like the one that just took place in Texas. Now, you want to focus on the fact that the shooter, who, by the way, should have never been able to purchase the firearm, but the government, who y'all seem to trust so much, failed when it came to his background check. But now you want to give more power to the government. But here's the other thing that you ignore. The guy who eventually took him down, guess what he had? Guess what he used? That's right, an AR-15. But y'all don't want to talk about that. What you want to do is you want to do this. You want to do like folks have done to me. You want to claim that I don't care about human life, when in reality, all I really want to do is to be able to protect human life, to be able to protect myself, my family, my community, and give others the ability to do the same. And help people, by the way, understand their responsibility. Let's just be real about the limitations of government and law enforcement. This is not a knock on law enforcement, but guess what? They can't be everywhere at all times. When the average response time of law enforcement is 11 minutes and the average time of an active shooter situation is less than 5, that tells you that on average, they're going to show up after everything is done. Those are just the facts. I know, I get it. You don't want to have that conversation. Your conversation is about how can you violate my rights? It's not a question of, well, I'm going to give you something and I'm going to get something. No, it's I'm going to take your rights. We're only going to debate how much I'm going to take. That's the conversation. And it doesn't matter that the more laws you pass, the less effect it has, because then you just say, well, obviously, if those laws didn't work, we must need more laws. And I know what's going to happen. You guys you're going to do the same exact thing. All you guys on the other side know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to say, oh, those crazy right-wing gun nuts and yada yada yada. You're going to come out and you know what you're going to do? You're going to try to shoot the messenger. Well, guess what? This messenger shoots back with the facts. With the facts. I am armed with the facts. Not that you care about the facts, but I do believe that there are some sincere people out there who are concerned with what they're seeing. And they really do want to know and understand. And they want to have a conversation, but we're never going to have that conversation until people are willing to be honest about the facts and honest about what's going on, honest about what the root cause of this violence is, and be willing to address that. Stop blaming inanimate objects and start looking at where the real power to change things are. That's the thing. If that's the conversation you want to have, I'm here. I'm down. And I think that a lot of people watching this would also be down. The question is, are you? Anyway, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like this video, share this video, let folks know what's going down here at FPC. Look, we are the place where civil rights, we are the premier civil rights organization because we know and understand that the Second Amendment is the civil right that defends all others. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.